We're going to end with one really great panel now. Very excited for this one. We're going to bring up some of the longtime innovators in ag tech and hear about their vision for the future of ag tech. So again, these are names that I'm sure you'll recognize, and I'm highly anticipating the panel to hear what they think is next. So please help me welcome Greg Tehven, the CEO of Emerging Prairie, and the whole panel for this conversation.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Greg, and it is an honor to be here. I am joined by three people that I would consider a hero, folks that have solved real problems, that have taken risks, and we are here kind of wrapping up the time for the main stage programming to talk about the future of agriculture technology. So what I'd like to do is just start with introductions. We'll start with Mary, Barry, and then for the sake of the panel, can we call you Howie versus Howard, just to kind of Mary, Barry, Howie? So what do you think? Should we call him Howie or Howard? So Howie, folks? All right, we're friends, or Howard? All right, we're going with Howie. 50-50 his whole life. Okay, so first up we have Mary. Mary, by background, is from Kansas. Any folks from the great state of Kansas? All right, we have one. Okay, great. We'll have an alumni photo out back. And Mary had the opportunity after law school, working internationally, to be the fourth attorney, I believe, hired at Microsoft, and the first female attorney hired at Microsoft. Went on to build the philanthropy division of Microsoft, and now gets to do special projects in artificial intelligence in rural America and beyond. So join me in welcoming to the stage, Mary. We have Barry from New York, who found his way to North Dakota for college, went on to put the first computer chip onto a tractor, built a company that did well, so John Deere bought it, did a joint venture with Howard, and then AgCo bought that company. So he's just got an incredible background. So join me in welcoming to the stage, Barry. And Howard identifies as the fourth most prominent entrepreneur in the history of his family. Welcome, Howie. So we're here today to talk about the future of agriculture. I'm going to kick it off with you, Mary. Give us a little insight. What are you excited about as it relates to the power of artificial intelligence?
There's a lot to be. Can you hear me? No, hold on. There we go. There's just so much to be excited about with artificial intelligence, and I just want to say, just to start with, someone earlier said there was a major technology disruption when we stopped using horses in agriculture and went to, automatic vehicles, batteries. But now I think it's data. Data is what's most to be excited about when you think about agriculture and how to use data. Right now, though, with artificial intelligence, there's so much promise, but we still are building out the infrastructure. So there's lots of great startups. You heard from a number of them today, but what's coming is really the next 2 or 3 years. Because what needs to happen between now and then is we really need to build out connectivity, fast internet connectivity, and there's still some work to do in rural parts of the country. We need to, just as an industry, our industry, be able to get more chips, more compute power. And then we need to build data centers. So once we build that infrastructure, which we're in the process of now, it's sort of like building electricity, in the 1920s and the 1930s, when, in 1930, like 1 in 10 farms had electricity, and 20 years later, they almost all did. And that's because there was transmission lines and electricity generation. That's what we're doing right now with AI. We are building out that infrastructure. So you might think about Microsoft as a software company, and we still are, but we will spend $60 billion this year on infrastructure, building out brick and mortar data centers with servers, with compute, and creating that infrastructure so that real promise of artificial intelligence over the next 2 to 3 years will be there. And we are just so excited about the diffusion of that technology. It will be a general purpose technology that will be used in all sectors of agriculture across the entire ecosystem. Not just AI, but what we call generative AI. So meaning rather than going deeply into databases to find answers that are already there, we'll be using data sets and correlation and statistics to help to predict answers. And that's what is so exciting.
Barry, I remember when we were getting the Grand Farm going, we got to have a meeting in your living room at your house, and you told me a story about engaging with Steve Wozniak. And he wanted to put a personal computer, and Mary, Steve Wozniak was from a fruit company.
Kind of remember that name.
So that was a Microsoft joke. But you were there when the computer was coming, and now we look at like what Elon Musk is doing, and we're looking at satellites and possibility. And you and I have dreamed about the possibilities of space and food production. Bring us a little insight in why food production in low orbit environments is critical in the exploration of possibility.
Okay, so
It'll just go. It's on.
hello. Okay, so do we want to focus on space?
Possibility of technology.
Okay, so full disclosure, and you probably heard this already. I went to the dentist and I had some dental work done, and I had a meeting with Greg. So I didn't have a lot of time to recover from this, and I was feeling pretty good when I met Greg. And so the conversation wandered a bit, and we got to the point where we were talking about space. And there's a lot of technology going on in the world today that we see that is focused on the emerging technologies in space. And the interesting thing about it today is that it's a commercial enterprise more than a government enterprise. When I was a young guy, the Apollo program was going on, and we were racing against Russia to prove to the world which superpower was more likely to be able to populate satellites and present a warfare-like position to the planet. And it was couched under the auspices of scientific discovery, but in reality, it was a military, government-sponsored race to space. Today, it's different. Today, there are actually commercial activities going on, and people are looking for commercial applications in space. And it's likely that in the lifetime of many of you folks, there will be permanent colonies established, at least on the moon. It turns out that putting stuff into orbit is horrendously expensive. And moving it from Earth orbit to other planets or other bodies is even more expensive. It just doesn't, and humans have this weakness where we like to eat. And to keep people nourished and alive in remote locations, it really doesn't make a lot of sense economically to try to transport a bunch of food. You really need to try to grow that food in situ. There's been experimentation that's been done with this, but if you look at the soil, for example, on the moon, we brought some samples back, and it's called regolith, and it's not really soil. It's completely devoid of organic material. It's more like if you took granite boulders and ground them up into tiny little pieces, and then tried to put a plant in there and have it grow. It's just not gonna work. And so the challenge as we move people and as we put permanent colonies in these locations, the challenge is going to be how to feed them. And it's not going to be necessarily a situation of transporting food and fiber to space. It's going to be a situation of how to organically grow that material in space. Maybe some of you folks have seen the movie The Martian, which is really an interesting take on, and a lot of that was founded in fact. Some of it was a little bit off the wall, but a lot of it was founded in fact. So we're going to be, our younger generation, they're going to be thinking very carefully about how do you take material, raw chemical materials, and move them to a place where they can replicate and where they can form the basis of nutrients for plants in other places. So I think when we look at the genetic work that's being done here on Earth, and there's lots of discussion about genetics in plants, that's going to go to a whole nother level as we talk about genetics in space. And a lot of the rules that take place here on this Earth won't be the same rules that take place in space. We'll see a generation of kids that are going to high school and college. Some of these people will actually go to the moon, and they're actually going to hang out there. And they're going to be tasked with the responsibility of creating a methodology to produce food and fiber on the moon first, and then later. It's a little far off the wall, but it's pretty cool to think about.
And we've got some of that pain medicine that we'll be handing out afterwards. So, just sponsored by the local dentist. Howard, you are a student. I mean, growing up in Gwinner, North Dakota, you're a student of the world. I think you've been over to Russia and Ukraine over 90 times. You've built partnerships with large organizations, global partners. How does collaboration play into future technology at a global scale?
The greatest successes I've seen are where nobody claims I get the credit for it, but rather it's a team of people. The most effective organizations. Barry was my dad's favorite engineer at Steiger Tractor, and Barry's a young engineer with a dream, and he says, I think it'd be really cool to put a chip on a tractor, and it was a huge risk, and the pressure that Barry felt after saying we could do that, it's the reason he worked 80-hour weeks for years and years, but he had a tight-knit team of people working with him. And I look at the story of Bobcat. The Keller brothers get credit for inventing the Bobcat. The real inventor, the idea was a turkey farmer who had a problem.
And I think they were most recently inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame last year.
Right. But the skid steer, as it's known, was developed by a team of people. And most people don't know the names of those 4 or 5 people that took this idea and created a true skid steer. And so the whole idea of a tight-knit team, and Barry and I were talking in 1985, my dad and I flew on John Deere's plane to be with the CEO of Deere, Bob Hansen. And his comment was, we have this huge budget, this huge team of engineers, and we can't build a tractor like you're building at Steiger. I mean, it was, and the reason was incredible collaboration with a small group of people that really trust each other. And I think the military's discovered that you get more than 8 people on a team, it's not going to be as effective. There's something about a smaller team so that's collaboration, and you can go across organizations too. It's hard to get a big committee doing anything effective.
So maybe a question for all of you, and we'll have you start, Mary, but if you go 10 years plus, so in your careers, you have some data points in your lives to give you some hope and some thoughts for the future. What excites you about the possibility in agriculture? It's 2034, Fargo just hosted the Olympics, it was incredible. What are you excited about in the future of agriculture?
I'm excited about young people in the future of agriculture, to be honest with you. One of the things that I have really enjoyed over the last 7 or 8 years is creating and continuing to build Microsoft's partnership with both 4-H and FFA. You all probably know, I'm guessing, we have many alums in this group. Do either or both FFA, 4-H? Hand raised?
2 hands if you got both.
Oh
ordered?
my gosh,
Okay.
2 hands. I would have thought more.
They just haven't enrolled yet. We'll have to sign up.
Well, yeah, we'll get you somehow. 4-H has 6 million young people now, and they're really on a strategy to really increase that number. FFA, don't tell them I said it, but they're at 1 million now. They're getting ready, and so these are amazing civic organizations and also educational organizations. So we've done a couple of things. With 4-H, we've really started something called Tech Change Makers that's now in about 37, 38 states. We've invested, Tractor Supply's invested, Land O'Lakes, Verizon, It's where a club decides to do a technology project and then teach it to the adults in their community. So that gets the kids exposed to digital, and it also gets the grandparents exposed in digital. So there will be a need for ongoing, continuous learning in this space. And it doesn't have to be scary. It can be your 4-H club really doing something digital. With FFA, we've got a little product called Farm Beats for Students. I actually have a kid in Taya Spellhog's car. It looks like a little bag of coffee. And with it, kids in FFA classrooms can use it to detect and identify soil moisture in a little potted plant growing, put it on a spreadsheet, and then create some data insights from that. So you're talking about, your regular Excel spreadsheet, data insights which exist today, but it's the beginning of teaching an AI curriculum. So it's really going to be important for us to manage that kind of continuous learning, starting with young people who may teach us. In fact, I know they will teach us. So I'm excited about young people. I really am, and I'm excited in particular about the number of young people who are not rural today, who are concerned about climate and sustainability and renewables. So I really think, we should be excited for the next generation.
Barry, take us out 10 years. What excites you? What are you curious about? Microphone.
Well, I think, that, can you hear me? Okay. I think there's a convergence coming between the design of plants and the design of equipment that works with the plants. I see a lot of interesting things going on. I ran into Dr. Lardy here from NDSU. He has a gentleman that's working with him that's working on modifying the genetics of small grains such that they do their own nitrogen fixation. Now, this is a pretty important thing because in North Dakota, farmers here purchase about $1.5 billion worth of fertilizers per year. Probably 2/3 of that is nitrogen-based fertilizers. This is expensive for the farmers, and it also speaks to sustainability with runoff and other things that happen when you use that much fertilizer. The change that they're talking about, changing the bean so that it actually fixes its own nitrogen, would eliminate the vast majority of that need for fertilizer. If you look at equipment that's being designed today, we design equipment fundamentally the same way that it was designed thousands of years ago. I went to Ethiopia when I was 20 years old. I worked in Africa, and people were planting rows with a stick. They'd pull it with an animal, and they'd put the seeds in this row. We're still planting plants in rows, and if nature doesn't plant plants in rows. Actually, a plant should be planted such that it pulls the nutrients from the soil in a conical shape down from the plant, sufficient to optimize the growth of the plant, which would mean that you'd actually stitch the plants into the field in a wireframe type configuration. It may be in the future that these machines go down the field and they're humming as they go because the heads are planting these things at an incredible rate of speed and putting each seed in the field precisely where it needs to be planted with the knowledge of the nutrient in that location. Each seed potentially would be known by the planter, have its own name, and each seed would be optimized for its growth. So I'm pretty excited about the convergence of machine capabilities with genetic engineering that will take the green revolution to its next step.
Howard, take us into the future. What are you excited about?
10 years from now or next week? Well, I've been spending a lot of time, after I read an article about agriculture being the least digitized industry, and it was probably that I read it about 6 or 7 years ago, and had the privilege of working with a great team, and I see the power of software tools, digital tools, to help agronomists, first of all, do a much better job of diagnosing. And a great doctor diagnoses really well before prescribing. And I think having tools that can allow, we've heard the phrase over and over, the right materials, right chemicals, seed or whatever, in the right place at the right time. Digital tools will allow us to accomplish this, which will make every farm far more efficient. So it's what I'm passionate about, amongst other things right now.
Mary, you've got a focus in rural America. How does technology change rural America communities 10, 20 years from now?
Well, how does it change it? I think technology, in my mind, will enable people to do digital and technology work in places they love and not move to the big city. And I think that's really, really important to enable us all to have opportunity across, so that we know the talent is everywhere, but the opportunity is not. And so technology will kind of democratize that opportunity. You got to start with broadband. We all know that. And hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, there's enough federal dollars there and flowing hopefully to the states to make that different. But just look at what's happened the last couple of years, the number of people who are working remotely and being able to do amazing jobs remotely. And I think the ability for technology to enable people to work where they love and to make great professions and careers will really, really make a big difference. And I could not be more excited. My background, we said Kansas. I grew up in a town of about 14,000 people. And I have a nephew who's an agronomist who I talk to almost every week. And he's using just some basic stuff. So I'm going to have to put him in touch with you, Howard, with some of your things. And I just came from Tulsa. I came from Green Bay last week. You guys don't think that's rural, but they think that's rural in Seattle. These are great cities. These are great cities, and they operate as a satellite, for the entire region where people can live and work. And so I'm just really excited that technology will let people do fantastic work and still be in a place they love.
Barry, what does the future homestead look like? The future homestead. What is the home environment going to be for somebody that lives on a farm?
Yeah, so as we look at Greg and I have talked about this. Greg is really working closely with his team to develop the Grand Farm out, and it's becoming quite an interesting place for the development of machinery and equipment for understanding the logistics of material flow and so on. But I tell Greg, my dream is that we have this, like Disney's experimental prototype community of tomorrow, we have the experimental prototype farm of tomorrow. And the problems that are being faced, the problems that will be faced on the farm, go far beyond the issues of technical and logistics. There's a huge number of sociological issues that will come into the farm of the future. The mega trends that are driving the farm community are going to continue. Farms are going to continue to get larger. Families are going to continue to get smaller. These are global trends. These are not the kinds of things that are easily reversible. And if you look at what happens when farms are getting larger and families are getting smaller, is that you have places. My wife is from Ada, Minnesota, and their high school was the Vikings. Go Vikings in Ada. And now it's Mayville, Portland, Glendon, Felton. They're combining all these high schools together because the families are getting smaller. And to justify a high school, you have to start busing these people in from 15, 20, 25 miles around. If you look at communities in North Dakota, Napoleon, North Dakota, Hettinger, Mott, New England, there are places where it's not so easy to get medical care anymore. These counties are dropping in population. The farmland is not going out of production. The farmland is being productively managed, but the people that manage those farms are getting fewer. We have to deal with such things as remote education, remote telemedicine, energy. I mean, at what point does it become not feasible to run electrical power out 40 miles to a farm, right? For all the power and all the maintenance of the lines. What about producing your own power on the farm? What about taking water and cracking it into hydrogen? How about hydrogen-powered machinery? And you know, your farm, all winter long you make hydrogen from solar and wind and other things, and all summer long you burn it up with the machines on the farm. I think there's an opportunity here at the Grand Farm to build an experimental farm of the future where these types of things are explored. I think you can have, we can tap on Elon Musk and ask him for solar tiles for our roof in the farm. We can have solar panel walls in the farm. We can, there's a number of industries where we can reach out and request assistance and financial contribution and build this farmstead using advanced technologies and materials from companies around the world. And then people can fly in from all over the world to come to the Grand Farm and explore this experimental farm of the future of 2050. So it's a dream I'd like to see sometime materialize. Knowing Greg, it'll probably come about in the next 5 years. But I think it's a very exciting and interesting thing to think about. The sociological context that overlays the mechanics of the Grand Farm.
All right. Well, we're getting kind of towards the back half here, so I'm going to go with Howard and come back. But the whole concept of Grand Farm was started with the question, what is our region's major? And it led to conversations and excitement around advanced technology and agriculture. To each of you, this is a room of 300 folks with wide backgrounds, perspectives, geographies, perspectives, industries. What questions should we be asking ourselves to make the biggest impact possible with agriculture? What are the questions we should be challenging ourselves to think about? Howard, I think you have a philosophy degree, so that's why I picked you.
By far my biggest concern is what de Tocqueville said in 1835, 1840 about the greatness of America versus what he considered the problems of France. He said, you come to America, decisions are made at a township level. Everybody is thinking through relationships, how we do things. Since France, it's top down. And then he wrote about Russia, everything top down, America, bottom up. I feel we're breaking apart. We're more polarized than we've ever been. And rural America has in the past provided the ballast of trust, and one of the previous speakers talked the word trust over and over. That's my greatest concern. And I think, and some of us have talked about Fargo, I think is an amazing place of civility in a way that a lot of communities are not. And so I think one of the things we maybe can do at Grand Farm is think through cultural values, spiritual values, all the values that have made great societies in the past. And we're breaking apart right now, and that's my big concern. So research is important, all these other things are important, but I'm far more concerned about the civility of our society.
All right, Barry. Barry, what question should all these folks ask themselves as they go to bed tonight? Because you asked me a question for 5 years. I've been trying to answer it and haven't quite figured it out yet, but you got to use the mic too, my friend. What is a question all of us should be asking ourselves?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. Everybody should ask what we want to be when we grow up, no matter how old you are. I think that the opportunities, human beings have an incredible capacity to reinvent themselves. And in life, things that we do are seldom final. If you're successful, that's not final. If you're a failure, you know, that's not final either, right? And we have this marvelous opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And I think we should be asking, as Howard's father used to ask all the time, what's next? What are you doing now that is making this place you live a better place? And it doesn't have to be huge, but every one of us every day can do something to make the place we live a better place, whether it's a technical thing or whether it's a sociological thing. I've been through now about 50 years in the agricultural sector in various stripes and flavors. And I
Colors.
never cease to be amazed at the power of people to do things that you just never expected them to do, to reinvent themselves and to wake up one morning and you find a whole new power, which is, that's what I think people should ask. What do you want to be when you grow up?
And then the pride of Kansas, Mary.
Well, I know you probably think I'm going to say something about continuous learning and technology, but I'm not. I really think it's so important for us to continue to really try to bridge this perceived urban-rural divide. We say it, we say it exists, we all nod our heads, but does it really exist? I mean, we all have the same principles. We all care about jobs. We all care about education. We all care about healthcare. We all care about our families, our kids. Those are not divides. Those are values that we hold across this country, whether you're living in Fargo or whether you're living in New York City. So I think it's important for us to continue to think about how we look at the values and the cultures that bring us together. And then when I think about artificial intelligence on top of that, yeah, it's going to be an amazing technology, but it's never going to have empathy. It's never going to be able to replace that intuition. It's never going to be able to give a kid a hug. So it's just so important for us to remember that at heart, we are the same. And those values really need to come together, should come together, and I think will.
Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Mary, Barry, and Howard.